This is a training session for Chapter 2 of DelDOT's Right-of-Way Engineering Manual. This presentation is meant to be an overview, and it is recommended that the manual is to be used for design rather than this presentation. Chapter 2 focuses on establishing the existing right-of-way mosaic. The chapter reviews where to find documents to research the existing right-of-way and how to request survey information. Resolving the existing right-of-way mosaic, establishing the existing right-of-way baseline, and resolving the existing right-of-way often happen concurrently and are described in this chapter. The importance of existing government boundary lines and documentation of the methods to establish the existing right-of-way mosaic in the project survey report are also covered in Chapter 2. The project tier determines what type of right-of-way plan is necessary. Projects are categorized into 3 tiers based on the potential impacts to the existing right-of-way and the corresponding levels of right-of-way verification required. Tier 1 projects would normally be pave and rehab, TAP, or PAR projects that don't have impacts outside the existing right-of-way and would not need right-of-way plans. Less complex methods for determining the existing right-of-way are noted in Chapter 2 for Tier 1 projects. Tier 2 projects have minor impacts outside the existing right-of-way and would only require an acquisition plat. Instructions for acquisition plats are covered in Chapter 6. Tier 3 projects have major impacts outside the existing right-of-way and require right-of-way plans. Tier 3 projects are normally capital projects. The first step in doing research is to find historic plans within the project area. The DelDOT Gateway is the primary source for archived plans. If the practitioner is unable to find the plans they are looking for, the DelDOT online archives can be utilized to find plans that are not currently on Gateway. The email address for the archives is dot.archiverequest@delaware.gov. The next place a practitioner can look is the DelDOT Records Center, located at 245 McKee Road in Dover, Delaware. An appointment must be made by calling 302-739-4935. When there is minimal documentation on a maintenance road or bridge, or when the facilities are maintained by a municipality instead of the State of Delaware Archives is a good option to research additional information to help determine existing right-of-way widths. The State of Delaware Archives building is located at 121 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard North in Dover, Delaware. The email address is archives@delaware.gov. The practitioner should note that as-acquired deeds supersede the historic plans. As-acquired plans will show differences between what was originally proposed on the plans versus what was purchased. The purchased property shown on the as-acquired plans will supersede the historic plans. When a project is initiated, the in-house practitioner should submit the initial project research request memo, which can be found on the DRC. A 60-year title search can be requested along with other information that may be useful to the practitioner. Before submitting initial project research request, the practitioner should establish the project limits and the extent of the research needed. A site visit is recommended to note any existing conditions that would indicate the existence of easements. A template that can be used to track deed research can be found on the DRC. Information should be arranged chronologically from most recent information to oldest information. If possible, the title search request or the practitioner's research should be performed prior to the survey and subdivision requests. This allows the practitioner to provide a draft property mosaic and note monumentation so that the surveyors can locate the monumentation in the field. The title search will include previously recorded subdivision plats, which may not be included as part of a subdivision request. Some parcels have recorded and unrecorded plats associated with them. Recorded and unrecorded plats can be typical boundary surveys, minor or major subdivisions of land, subdivision construction plans, site plans, or an ALTA ACSM plat. Components of a plat could include the grantor/grantee, source of title, tract size, boundary location and meets and bounds, existing and/or dedicated rights-of-way, existing and/or dedicated easements, zoning, reservations, open space, and found and/or proposed monumentation. The practitioner should contact the engineer or surveyor of record and try to obtain a copy of the unrecorded plat. The plat may be referenced in the chain deed text. Other times, it may be listed in the parcel data on the respective county GIS mapping website. Each recorded plat for a parcel should be reviewed to help the practitioner establish the existing right-of-way along the parcel frontage. Also, any easements, dedications, or reservations should be included in the right-of-way design file. The team support section should be consulted if there are any questions on how the easements, dedications, or reservations should be shown. An easement is the legal right to use someone else's property for a specific limited purpose, but the legal title to the land itself remains with the property owner. When land is encumbered by an easement, the value of the property is impacted. Also, when an easement is impacted by an acquisition, those other interests in the property are entitled to fair and just compensation. So it is important to include any known existing easements in the right-of-way design file for valuation purposes and for DelDOT to obtain the full rights within the proposed acquisitions. Utilities are encountered frequently on DelDOT projects. A utility easement allows the utility company the right to use and access private property to construct, maintain, and/or remove their overhead or underground facilities, such as gas, electric, water, sewer, or communication lines. Utility easements can either be defined with a known width and location on a parcel or a general or blanket easement with no width or location identified. A tax ditch is constructed on a right-of-way owned jointly by the property owners who have formed an organization on a watershed basis to construct and maintain a drainage system. The right-of-way includes the area to construct and maintain a tax ditch and use the lands to spread materials from maintenance dredging of the tax ditch. This right-of-way is treated as an easement since the underlying lands are owned by private property owners and a tax ditch organization has been granted rights to access the ditch. There is more information on tax ditch agreements in Chapter 8. Miscellaneous easements include aerial, ingress, egress, regress, cross-access, shared use paths, drainage, agricultural preservation, forest land preservation, conservation, slope, and daylight or site easements. It should be noted that any general or blanket easement notes on a recorded plat should be included in the right-of-way mosaic even if the utility or other feature has not been installed. The easement will still exist until the recorded plan sunsets. For consistency within DelDOT and for all consultants as well, the following research file naming protocol has been established. This format should be used for all recorded documentation that is saved. All documentation for a project parcel will be combined into a single PDF file for upload to ProjectWise. These single PDF files will replace the need for separate parcel folders under the 280 Existing Property Rights folder. Note, when the files are combined into the single PDF file, the file names assigned to the individual files will automatically be created as bookmarks in the PDF. This allows for easy navigation in the combined PDF. When the individual documents are combined into the single PDF file, they should be grouped by deed, will, easement, then plat, and within each group, sorted in chronological order from newest to oldest. After the parcel and right-of-way research has been performed, and preferably the draft property mosaic created, the next step is to obtain field survey of the project area. These tasks can be performed concurrently so as not to delay a project. The survey includes not only the physical features needed for design, such as flexible and rigid surfaces, buildings, structures, drainage, and vegetation, but also physical evidence and property monumentation, such as concrete monuments, pins, and rebar. This information will help to resolve the right-of-way mosaic and property sidelines and any features on a property that could potentially be impacted by the project. The Delaware Board of Professional Surveyors has developed minimum standards regarding topographic and boundary survey that all licensed surveyors in the state of Delaware must adhere to. These standards are defined in State Code Title 24, Chapter 27. In addition to these standards, DelDOT's survey section has put together a guidebook to help with consistency between DelDOT projects. The DelDOT Survey Guidebook is available on the Design Resource Center under Survey. Its purpose is to provide guidance and conformity to both in-house and consultant survey crews. It highlights the minimum standards DelDOT requires pertaining to GPS control, traverse, vertical control, field procedures, and stakeout. These standards are the minimum DelDOT requires, and the in-house and consultant survey crews are allowed to provide survey at a higher degree of accuracy if they so choose. The DelDOT Survey Guidebook or State of Delaware Title 24 minimum standards shall be utilized, whichever is more stringent. For in-house projects, when the DelDOT practitioner submits a survey request to the DelDOT Survey section, the following should typically be provided with the request. The type of project, so that the survey section knows the types of features to locate. A graphic showing the project area and limits of survey needed, typically an aerial map. Current deeds of parcels needing to be resolved in the right-of-way mosaic. Sometimes the deeds may not be available if the task is being performed concurrently so as not to delay the project. Archived contract plans within the project limits. If research has been completed, a graphic or draft property mosaic showing where existing monumentation is called for in deeds, plats, and archived plans. This helps the surveyors know where to focus their efforts in locating monuments. Placing the draft mosaic on the graphic should fit close enough for existing monument searches. For DelDOT in-house survey requests, the practitioner should fill out and submit the survey and GPS control request form located on the DRC under survey forms. It is recommended that consultants follow a similar process. Before the survey can be performed, the project control network must be established. The control points shall be set in the field based on DelDOT's minimum standards as laid out in the DelDOT Survey Guidebook. Not all monumentation is cited in deeds, since many boundary surveys have been performed for other reasons than the transfer of title. Monumentation may have been installed for earlier deeds that are not included with the 60-year title search and not described in the more current deeds. Ensure that any monumentation that is discovered is located, whether called for in the deed or not. When monumentation is called for in a deed, plot, or archived plan, it is important that information be given to the survey section so that those monuments can be recovered in the field if they still exist. The found monumentation will help with the placement of the properties in relation to each other. It also helps with establishing the location of the right-of-way corridor. The more existing monumentation that can be found and located, the better the end result for the right-of-way mosaic. Monumentation in the backs of the property should also be located to ensure the right-of-way is correct and that the sidelines are correct. Survey crews should also locate evidence of possession, such as fences, during their search for monumentation. Pictures and description of what was found, including pipe sizes, color of cap, and what is written on the cap, should be provided to the practitioner. This is important information to have, as different monuments can carry different priorities when resolving the properties and right-of-way. It is also important for survey to locate all existing topographic features on a property that may potentially be impacted by the project. These features are important for the appraisal section when they are making their valuations on the impacts to a property. For example, septic systems, wells, and parking stalls in a parking lot should all be located, in addition to all buildings, landscaping, and other man-made features. More information on finding existing septic system permits and well permits can be found in the Right-of-Way Engineering Manual in Chapter 2 and on the DRC. To develop the right-of-way mosaic, the following tasks may be performed concurrently or in the order best suited to the practitioner: resolving the right-of-way mosaic, establishing the existing right-of-way baseline, or resolving the existing right-of-way. To resolve the right-of-way mosaic, the meets and bounds in the deeds and plats for each parcel within the project limits should be plotted in the mosaic file. These boundaries can then be pieced together based on the common property lines and placed or rotated on the found monumentation, allowing any gaps or overlaps to be resolved. It is recommended that the most recent aerials be referenced into the design file to visualize the mosaic's placement and rotation. The aerials are not definitive, however, they can be used as a tool for locating existing monumentation. When using Bentley products, the current best practice is to utilize the Bing Maps add-in directly inside the Bentley software. The process of establishing the existing right-of-way baseline involves recreating the most pertinent baseline from the archived plans, including the geometry and stationing, and placing it on a best fit of the baseline of the road as originally constructed, and any called for right-of-way monumentation within the archived plans. It is also recommended to reference the most recent aerial photography into the design file as a general guide in the placement and rotation of the baseline. The aerials are not definitive, however, they can be used as a tool for locating existing monumentation. When using Bentley products, the current best practice is to utilize the Bing Maps add-in directly inside the Bentley software. In some instances, there are multiple existing right-of-way baselines that have been utilized to purchase right-of-way and will need to be recreated from the different archived contracts. The limits of the various baselines and their historic contracts should be noted. It should also be noted that for roadways that only have dirt road projects as archived plans, the right-of-way baseline should be established as a best fit of found improvements called for in the archived plans, the center line of the road as originally constructed, and acquisition deeds prior to any improvements, including curves wherever necessary. The stationing from the dirt road projects should not be used. The stationing was typically given in miles, not feet. Permanent easements for dirt road projects only provide the offset from the center line and the adjoining owners. Daylight easements are usually separate deeds. None of these documents typically include full descriptions of the acquisitions. While the existing right-of-way baseline and property boundaries are being established, the existing right-of-way corridor needs to be established. Using the archived plans and as-acquired deeds, The existing right-of-way baseline should be offset the distances called for at the stations specified to create the right-of-way corridor. Generally, these offsets should be even distances unless otherwise specified due to a jog in a property line. Also, the existing right-of-way corridor should end up being a best fit of the found monumentation and hit most evidence relatively well. Right-of-way by permanent easement defines the existing right-of-way line as established by a permanent easement granted to the state. Easements such as King's Roads and Highways, statute law, 20-year law, and dirt road easements are shown as right-of-way by permanent easement on the right-of-way plans. Existing right-of-way by permanent easement is shown on the mosaic to establish the right-of-way corridor. Existing right-of-way in fee is land that has been acquired by DelDOT, including the underlying fee simple ownership. DelDOT has clear ownership of this land. This ownership is typically recorded in some type of document in the respective county's recorder of deeds. A denial of access is a section of a property that is denied direct access to a state-maintained road. It is delineated with a DA line style with regards to the plans. A DA is found on interstate or limited access facilities like SR1, I-95, and US 301. When a denial of access is established, it can coincide with the right-of-way or can be a separate line within the right-of-way depending on the project needs. A denial of access should not be eliminated without concurrence from DelDOT and FHWA if it is an interstate highway. A right-of-way dedication is land that is granted to DelDOT as right-of-way, but the private property owner may still retain the underlying fee simple ownership. Right-of-way dedications should be treated as easements with regards to the plans unless otherwise specified. A right-of-way dedication shown on a recorded plat should be treated as an existing easement if the dedication note or other notes on the plat do not indicate the intent of the transfer of the land to the state of Delaware is in fee. In a recorded deed, if a strip of land is noted to be dedicated, then the grantor is aware of this transfer and the intent is that it is in fee. The existing right-of-way would then be expanded to include this area. The practitioner may need to consult with the team support section to determine the intent of the dedication. If further clarification is required, the team support section will consult with DelDOT Legal. Each county may or may not treat dedications on plats as right-of-way in fee. Regardless, all right-of-way dedications should be evaluated on a case-by-case situation. Research is performed to determine intent through deed research, tax records, and conversations with the county and team support as needed. DelDOT's Development Coordination section has established regulations on the dedications of land in Section 3.2.5.2 of the Development Coordination Manual. A right-of-way reservation is a commitment by DelDOT for future acquisition from an owner of any interest in a property, in exchange for an agreement by the owner to refrain from further developing the property within the reserved or designated area. Right-of-way reservations are to be shown on the plans. These right-of-way reservation areas may be outside of other existing rights-of-way by permanent easement or existing rights-of-way by fee. Right-of-way reservations typically occur through the development coordination process. The railroad property boundaries are normally shown as existing property lines, and the state's existing right-of-way lines typically stop at the railroad property on either side of the crossing. At some road crossings of railroad property, DelDOT acquired permanent easements. These should be shown as such and the appropriate documentation identified. Water rights pertain to all title and non-title lands within the state of Delaware. DNREC has control of all subaqueous title lands within the state under state law. This means that all title lands are owned by the state, and any adjoining property owners own to the mean low water mark of the title boundary. All subaqueous title lands within designated canals and other navigable waters in the state are owned and controlled by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, also referred to as waters of the U.S. Riparian rights pertain to any non-title waterways in the state. They are those rights and obligations that are incidental to owning land adjacent to or abutting these natural watercourses, such as ditches and streams. Typically, the adjacent property owners have rights to the meandering centerline of the ditch or stream unless otherwise specified in their deed of record. A conservation easement imposes limitations on an area for the purpose of preserving the cultural, scenic, or environmental aspects of the property. If an existing conservation easement is found during the research for a project, it should be included in the right-of-way design files as an existing easement and noted as such. Existing government boundary lines, such as municipality, county, or state, should be included in the right-of-way design file for inclusion in the appropriate plan sheets when the project limits fall along these boundary lines. Identifying the municipality boundary line is important because a town agreement will need to be prepared for maintenance responsibilities for the project. The municipal boundary may affect the valuation of a property by the appraisal section. Identifying the county boundary lines is important for valuation of properties by the appraisal section and to determine tax parcels. Identifying the state boundary line ensures that acquisitions are being performed within the state. Project limits and acquisitions outside of Delaware will require agreements with the respective neighboring state. If the deed boundaries of a project parcel that requires acquisition extend across a state line, the total area of the parcel and the area of the parcel within Delaware should be shown in the data tables. If the area within Delaware is not identified in the deed or other recorded document, then the assessed area can be used. The relevant state line monuments should be pulled from the NGS website, located in the field, and plotted and incorporated into the right-of-way design files relative to the project control network. For in-house projects, detailed notes should be taken during the development of the Right-of-Way Mosaic. The notes should include all background information on how the Right-of-Way Mosaic was established. The historic contracts that were used to reestablish the existing right-of-way baseline and the existing right-of-way corridor should be noted. The process for how each project parcel was resolved, including the found monumentation that was held, and any closure issues should also be noted. Any existing easements for each project parcel should also be documented. The notes are made in the right-of-way DGN file as shown on the DRC in the document titled Best Practices for Documenting the Establishment of the Existing Right-of-Way Baselines and Existing Right-of-Way Mosaic. The project survey notes should be included with the first submission for the project, which can be at the survey, preliminary, or semifinal stage. The project survey report should be prepared by the practitioner for consultant projects. Detailed notes should be taken during the creation of the right-of-way mosaic to aid in the preparation of the project survey report. The report is completed after the right-of-way mosaic has been fully resolved, including the found monumentation, existing right-of-way, existing property boundaries, and existing easements. This report should include all background information on how the right-of-way mosaic was established. The historic contracts that were used to reestablish the existing right-of-way baseline and the existing right-of-way corridor should be discussed. The process for how each project parcel was resolved, including the found monumentation that was held and any closure issues. Any existing easements for each project parcel should be noted. An example of a project survey report and general guidance has been included on the DRC. The project survey report should be included with the first submission for the project, which can be at survey, preliminary, or semifinal stage. The project survey report helps to streamline the review of the existing right-of-way mosaic.